Have you ever spent hours cramming for a test only to have it all just vanish a week later? Or, you finish a great book, and when someone asks you what it was about, you just struggle to explain the main ideas? Well, we're about to totally transform your relationship with learning. We're going to build a toolkit of real, scientifically backed strategies to help you not just memorize stuff, but to truly understand it and keep it, for good. Let's get into it.
This quote from the philosopher Mortimer Adler absolutely nails it. See, real learning isn't just about soaking up facts like a sponge, it's about being able to wring that sponge out and explain those ideas to someone else. It's about owning the information. If you can't put an idea into your own words clearly and simply, chances are you haven't quite grasped it yet. And that right there, that simple test, is our starting point.
And this leads us to that universal frustration, right? We all feel it. We put in the time, we read the chapter, we sit through the lecture, but so much of that knowledge feels like it's written in sand, just washed away by the very next wave of information. It's a problem every single one of us has faced.
But here's the really good news. The problem probably isn't you. It's not a faulty memory or some kind of leaky brain. More often than not, it all comes down to the methods we're using. Think about it. We've been taught what to learn our whole lives, but has anyone ever really taught us how to learn effectively?
A huge piece of this puzzle is something researchers call the illusion of fluency. We naturally lean towards study methods that feel easy and productive, like rereading our notes over and over, or highlighting half a textbook. It feels like we're accomplishing something, but these passive techniques create this false sense of mastery. They lead to learning that's fast and easy, but unfortunately, it's also fast and easy to forget.
And here's the scale of the problem we're up against. Research shows that we can lose up to 80% of what we learn if we don't actively review it within just 24 hours. Let that sink in. 80%. That is a staggering loss for all the hard work you put in. Okay, so look at this chart. It shows the massive difference our methods can make. That bar on the left, that's the typical forgetting curve. That's what happens when you cram. The information just plummets almost right away. But that bar on the right, that's what happens when you use a strategic method called spaced repetition. The retention is so much higher. So the big question is, how do we get that result?
Well, it all starts at the very beginning, that first encounter with new information. We have to shift from being these passive sponges to being active participants in our own learning. So let's look at two incredibly powerful methods for doing exactly that.
First up, for when you're reading something, especially something dense or difficult, there's the SQ3R method. This isn't about just letting your eyes glaze over the page. It's a full-on strategy to deconstruct and really understand the material. Think of it like giving your brain a warm-up and a game plan before you dive into the text.
And each step here is designed to make you an active learner. So first, you survey the material, get the lay of the land. Then you turn the headings and subheadings into questions. This gives your reading a real purpose. Now you can read with the specific goal of answering those questions. Afterwards, you recite what you just learned in your own words. And finally, you review it all again within 24 hours to really start locking it in.
Okay, so what about for lectures or videos? For that, there's the Cornell note-taking system. And this is not about frantically trying to write down every single word the person says. It's a super structured format that's designed to turn your notes into an active learning tool right from the get-go.
The real magic of Cornell Notes is in the process. You record your notes during the lecture in the main column. Then, soon after, you reduce them by pulling out key ideas or questions into the smaller side column. Then you cover up the main section and try to recite the information using only your cues. You reflect on the material, thinking about how it connects to what you already know, and, you guessed it, you review it regularly. It completely changes note-taking from a chore into a powerful learning cycle.
Okay, so we've taken in the information actively. That's step one. But how do we forge that raw info into deep, lasting knowledge? This next phase is all about building true comprehension, separating what we've just memorized from what we actually genuinely understand.
And this, right here, is the goal. Look, anyone can parrot back complex jargon they just heard. That's shallow knowledge. Deep understanding, that's the ability to strip away all the complexity and explain the core idea in simple, everyday language. That is the ultimate test of whether you really get it.
And the absolute best tool for this is the Feynman technique. It's named after the brilliant physicist Richard Feynman, who was a master of this. The core idea is just beautiful in its simplicity. If you can't explain something to a reasonably smart 12-year-old, you don't really understand it yourself. Period.
So here's how you do it. 1. Pick the concept you want to learn. 2. Try to explain it out loud, in the simplest terms you can, like you're teaching somebody. This is you practicing recall. 3, and this is the most important part, you will inevitably get stuck. You'll hit a wall. Those are your knowledge gaps. This process builds metacognition, which is just a fancy word for being aware of what you don't know. And 4, you go back to the book or video, fill in those gaps, and then you try to simplify your explanation all over again until it's crystal clear. So while the Feynman technique is amazing for understanding one concept really deeply, concept mapping helps you see how a bunch of different ideas all connect to each other. It's a way to visually organize your knowledge and build a web of understanding, instead of just having a list of isolated facts.
The process is actually pretty fun. First, you just do a brain dump of all the key ideas onto a page. Then, pick one to be your central concept and start arranging the others around it. But here's the secret sauce. Step 4. Adding linking terms. Forcing yourself to write down how things are connected, using little phrases like causes or leads to or is an example of. That is what builds that deep, connected web of knowledge in your mind.
All right, we've captured information actively. We've built a real understanding. Now, for the final phase, how do we lock it all in for good? This is where we turn that fragile, short-term knowledge into robust, permanent memory that you can call on whenever you need it.
The single most powerful tool for building long-term memory is something called retrieval practice. And honestly, it's a little counterintuitive. We tend to think that learning is all about putting information into our brains. But all the research shows that the most effective learning happens when we are actively pulling information out of our memory.
And this is the absolute key. That feeling of effort, that mental struggle when you're trying to remember something without looking at your notes, that's not you failing. That is the feeling of learning happening. It's like lifting weights for your brain. The strain, the effort, that's what's actually building the memory muscle. No pain, no gain.
So if retrieval practice is the exercise, then spaced repetition is the training schedule. It's brilliant. Instead of cramming all at once, you strategically review information at longer and longer intervals. This technique works with your brain's natural tendency to forget. You interrupt the forgetting curve right when you're about to lose the information. And doing that dramatically strengthens the memory each time.
And you don't need some complex app to get started. A really simple framework like the 2-3-5-7 method can work wonders. So, for example, you could plan to review a new concept 2 days after you learn it, then 3 days after that, then 5 days later, then 7. It's just a really practical, straightforward way to systematically burn that knowledge into your long-term memory.
So, we have covered a lot of ground here, right? From how we first take in information, to how we build deep understanding, to how we make it permanent. Now, let's put it all together into one cohesive system.
And here it is, your ultimate learning toolkit. It breaks down into 3 phases. For phase 1, active intake, your goal is to engage with new material, and your tools are SQ3R and Cornell notes. For phase 2, deep understanding, you want to test and connect that knowledge using the Feynman technique and concept maps. And for phase 3, permanent memory, your goal is to lock in that learning for the long haul using retrieval practice combined with spaced repetition. See how they all fit together? It's a powerful system for learning pretty much anything.
The most important thing to remember is that learning is a skill. It's not some fixed talent you're born with. It is a system that you can build and improve. With this toolkit, you are no longer at the mercy of that forgetting curve. You're in the driver's seat. So the only real question left is, what are you going to master next?